Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I am so excited to be joined here today by one of the best social media marketers in the world. Welcome, Melanie. It's so nice to meet you. We've got Melanie is the Senior Director and Head of Communications at Hootsuite, and she is here to unlock some of the secrets behind social media for building strong relationships and revenue. Melanie, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks so much. Great to, so thankful to be here. So thank you for having me.
Amazing. Thank you. I'd love to hear in the chat from our amazing public and our amazing audience, what is your currently favorite social media platform? And why we get some of your feedback. What I will do is just remind you very quickly that the Q&A is open and so is the chat. So please keep using it. This is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be interactive and it's supposed to be engaging. Amazing. So I'm seeing here some responses. We've got TikTok. That's a big one for sure. Instagram, LinkedIn. I love that. Yes, love them. Oh, thanks, Laura. Instagram. Spend a lot of time on Facebook, but I don't love it. Do you know what? I feel the same, Eileen. I don't really love Facebook, but I feel like I'm a millennial and I am still stuck on Facebook myself where I can't get out. But this is awesome. It's great to see. Well, anyway, thank you again, Melanie, for joining us. The Q&A is open, and I am so excited to hear, and I'm sure so is the audience, about how we should use social media effectively to build meaningful relationships with our audience and drive inbound sales. Melanie, the floor is yours. I'll let you take it away.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining. As Kinga said, let's be interactive. Let's ask questions. I'm happy to address those whether during the presentation or afterwards. So please don't hesitate to put those in the chat. I'd love to hear where everyone's from to get us going today. These virtual events are so fun to bring people from so many different communities together and build relationships, which is really kind of the next segue into what we're talking about today. So a fun fact about Hootsuite. So as Kinga said, I oversee global corporate communications at Hootsuite. And so we work really closely with our marketing colleagues and as well our sales teams. And a really fun fact about Hootsuite is we are 100% of our revenue is inbound. I know that seems a little strange for a SaaS company, but it really is the situation. And it really is around that top of funnel focus. So today I'm going to let you in a little bit on that and show you a little bit of our Hoot sauce, our secret sauce. So an 85-year-old Harvard study found that there is one thing that makes us happy in life, the number one thing that makes us happy in life. It helps us live longer. What do you think that is? Relationships. It really is the relationships we forge in our lives. And then our friends at Harvard had another study around the B2B elements of value and looked at what B2B buyers need in order to make decisions. And guess what came up again? You got it. It's relationships. And so I can't hammer on this hard enough today. It's really the focus of our entire conversation. So really, no matter what industry you are in the relationship business. And really what we see is those modern relationships exist on social media. When you think about the sheer breadth of social, when you think about 4.7 billion users around the globe on social, it's really where connections that drive business value are created, scaled, and realized. So what's the key to unlocking the business value of your social relationships? And from our perspective, it's really about understanding what makes a valuable relationship. So let's first explore the most important relationship of our time. Now, I know that my previous presenter also talked about this. And so is it really this relationship? I don't think so. It really is how these two brands have come together and leveraged the power of the personal relationship as brand relationships. So I want to really unpack a little bit about the journey of relationships. we really look at it as having three key parts. The first part of a relationship really is that awareness phase. You think about it from an individual relationship, it's not dissimilar to a brand relationship with our customers. It really starts with listening and a shared awareness of one another. And so when you unpack this relationship that has been unfolding between these two brands, it really has impacted their ability to reach new audiences. So when you look at the NFL, their viewership earned 63% of an increase with women after the first time that Taylor attended an NFL game. And so by the time the Bears and the Chiefs game had rolled around, the NFL had enough social data to understand the opportunity that existed in front of them. And there was a whole new audience that was going to tune into their game that they now had a chance to impress. So what were they going to do with that? So then we think about this next phase of relationships being around relevance. So when you think about these trajectories that relationships follow, the idea of relevance is really about how to become more meaningful as it becomes a two-way street, as you do things for one another. And what does that look like for a brand and its customers? So the way that the NFL handled this in a segment that usually opens with player highlights and information about where teams are in the standings, NBC dedicated that very important and highly viewed airtime to building the Kelsey Swift storyline. They wanted to welcome this new audience and frame the offering in a way that was the most relevant to this group. And they also changed their profile on their social, saying Taylor was here, 9/23/23. So they were really leveraging that opportunity. And then the next phase of a relationship is around significance. So the significance piece comes in once trust is built. Once you become significant to your customer, it's a completely different relationship that has a lot more staying power. And so in this situation, the NFL did their part. They changed their programming approach, they changed their PR approach, and they changed their broadcast because of the awareness they created. They knew that they had this opportunity to reach a whole new audience, and they needed to show up. So they were able to unlock the value of the relationship that they invested in. But what's going to be really interesting now to continue to watch is how they continue to build this relationship with this massive new audience that they've now been exposed to. And so that's what will be interesting to watch, especially on their social channels, to see if they can maintain that relationship. Because when you look at the behaviors of this new audience, when you see that stat, that 400% increase in jersey sales of that Kelsey jersey, there isn't a stronger walking reference. There isn't a stronger signal of significance than wearing a brand on your body. So it will be very interesting to see what they do with that. So now that we know the journey of a relationship, how can your company build more valuable relationships on social media? So awareness really starts with understanding your audience, and good friendships, as we all know, start with great listeners. So I'd love to hear from all of you. So how many of you in the audience today feel like your organization truly knows the audience that you're communicating with? When you are communicating on social, when you are communicating in all of your marketing efforts, how many of you really, really feel that you have a strong handle on who you're communicating with? Would love to hear that. I'll just give it a second. Okay. What we found is every year we do a social trends report, and we talk to social media marketers, we talk to consumers, and 42% of marketers truly don't know who their audience is, let alone what makes them tick, which is a concerning stat, but it is what we found in our data. And so it's really thinking about who it is you're talking to on social. And so much of the time, it's easy to see social as this massive pool that you can reach anyone, anywhere, anytime. But it really takes that focus to bring it back to understand, I don't need to talk to 4.7 billion users on social. I really just need to talk to the people that I'm needing to reach. So the information is there if you want it. on social. So understanding who your audience is on social comes down to that social listening and being active on social. And every day your customers are going there and they're telling you their wants, they're telling you their needs, and they're telling you their biggest pain points. So it really just comes down to us to listen and to really leverage and really tap into our social media teams and have that engagement with our social media teams and our leaders in the organization, because there isn't anyone as close to our customer, arguably, I really argue that, than your social media team, because they are engaging every day on social. They are hearing from your champions, they're hearing from your detractors. And so it's a really simple form of figuring it out is with social listening. You'll find out why they love you. You'll find out why they're leaving you. And those types of insights are absolutely gold. And why is it important? It's because 10% of your top audience or your brand champions can make up a majority of your revenue. So it's really important to foster those relationships. And your social team can take all this social intelligence and arm your product, your marketing, and your sales teams. It's really like we like to think about it. It is like a final exam with an open book. You have all of that in front of you, all of that data. It's just a matter of tapping into it. And as a reminder for us marketers, all of this social intelligence is really first-party data. So as our cookies go away, as our poor cookie monster cries, it is really that first-party social intelligence data that we have at our fingertips. So one of our customers, VMware, was really took this to heart, and as do I'm sure many of you, as this is a really great strategy, and it's really looking at using social to have the two-way conversation. When we talk about relevance, it's really around having that two-way conversation. So VMware is a software company, and they use social as that ultimate social intelligence tool and listening to what their customers are saying, but they're also prompting customers with polls by asking, and by asking these questions, they found out not only what the biggest concern is, but sparked a conversation in the comments that helps them create even more relevant content and helped inform their product strategies. So it's both the input into that poll, but the engagement and the conversation in the comments is absolutely golden. And then I'd like to highlight North Carolina State University, which is another customer of ours. And every year they go out to their alumni, predominantly on social for their day of giving. And this year they raised $34 million in one day. And that's a 50% increase over last year. And so to build that campaign, they used some retroactive social listening data from their last year's day of giving. And they were able to see what posts received the most engagement and take those learnings into this year's campaign. So again, what your social team can glean about your audience is so critical and important, because as they were engaging with their audience, they know what's top of mind for their students. And they know that mental health on campus is extremely important to NC State. So through their sentiment tracking, the social team was able to understand their audience. And although Day of Giving was super important to them and had to be one of the big highlights on social during that time, they didn't want it to be the only topic that they talked to their audience about, because their audience really was their alumni and their students. So they couldn't alienate their students in that time. So they were able to identify when they were pushing the Day of Giving content too hard and alienating their students, and were able to remind leadership to scale back to focus on the mental health of their students at the same time. And that all comes down to listening really more than you're speaking. So I'm sorry, I forgot to advance that one. My apologies. So relevance is really created when customers become invested in you. A healthy relationship really is a two-way street. So a great modern social strategy comes down to consistently adding value to the relationship so that you can earn the right to extract that value later. We've talked here about Hootsuite, here at Hootsuite for quite a long time about social and how brands use social, and talking about the idea of not using it as a megaphone and just constantly pushing out your message. It really comes down to that, what we like to call that 90-10 rule. And it really is around, if you are able to provide value to your audience, 90% of the time, where you are producing engaging content, where you are providing information and intelligence to your audience that they are seeking and they're looking to you for as thought leaders in your space, then it gives you that right to extract that value from them 10% of the time. So whether that is asking them to download a white paper or asking them to make a purchase, it's that two-way street, but the street has to be going more so in the direction of the customer than it is in your direction. So let's take another little poll from everyone and get a sense of whether your social content strategy, do you feel, is built upon clear customer pain points? Would love to hear from all of you and what that's looking like in the chat. So again, our social trends report, what we found is what people are telling us is that brands are selfish on social media. Kind of comes back to that megaphone situation. So what we heard was approximately 40% of consumers feel brands are too focused on themselves. And then approximately 50% of brands post about themselves multiple times a week. But that's not necessarily what your audience is looking for. But we get it. I mean, creating quality content that provides value is super hard. I mean, it is only one aspect of the job of a social media marketer, especially as we think about how strategic this role is, how strategic it is in building relationships that ultimately drive revenue for your organization. So that concept of always having to come up with content is difficult. And there are new tools. I'm sure throughout this conference, we're talking about AI. Generative AI is everywhere. It is helpful to us as marketers, but it never should take away from the human touch. It should never take away from your social media manager having that last point of touch with that content so that you are sure that it aligns with your brand, that it aligns with what we're talking about today, that it is about providing value and creating relationships. But it does spark some new ideas from a writer's block perspective. But then when you think about relevance and you think about what it takes to be relevant, one of the most powerful ways to create that with your audience is to empower your most valuable advocates. Because who those people are your employees, because they can be an extension of your social team and they can drive your business objectives and create an entire new network for your brand messaging. So this stat that we have here, this 8 times more engagement with content shared by employees versus own channels, it's a number that we took from LinkedIn. And it really is the case, is that the reach that your employees have, the opportunity to engage and build relationships with audiences that have connected with your employees, but perhaps not with your brand, is absolutely priceless. And customers find content from employees, i.e. real people, more valuable than brands, full stop. Doesn't mean your social team isn't real people, but it's behind that. So the employee piece is so critical in also helping to foster that relevance and build relationships. So Colliers is one of our customers, and just to kind of highlight how they've done this, we've recently nominated them for an award for their program, and what they were able to do is quite impressive, as you'll see here. So they had over 4,500 employee posts shared last year by their employees, and that reached 9.5 million last year, and that was a 43% increase from the year before without doing an employee advocacy program or an employee advocacy, and 229% increase in social media impressions year over year. So that is a huge tool in your toolbox to continue to leverage your employees and to continue to push out your messaging in different ways. So now let's continue to unpack this whole journey of a relationship now to that kind of final stage of significance. And that's built when there's mutual loyalty. Best friends and partners are there when you need them the most. So the idea for us as marketers, as social media marketers, is not to pull to not feel like have your customers feel like Mr. Bean does here. It really is about being where your customers are and engaging with your customers where they are and when they want that engagement. So JD Power did a study, and they found that 7% of users, customers have used a company's social media channel for customer service. And 74% expect a response within 60 minutes. That's quick. But when you think about, how people have held on hold on telephones and different things, they're looking for that immediacy, they're looking for that opportunity to talk to somebody. And so I would love again to hear from all of you and understand whether your company has a really clear social media customer service strategy. See how you're feeling about where you're sitting there right now. I'm not sure if any of you heard about this story. This blew up very recently, but I think this is just such an amazing example. I'm going to play this video and then we're going to chat about it.
It's in a fire yesterday. It still has ice in it.
Hey, Danielle. My name is Terrence Riley. I'm the president of Stanley. And we've all seen your video. Wow, what an ordeal. And we're all really glad you're safe. Thanks for sharing the video because, wow, it really shows how our Stanleys are built for life. Because what it went through with you, I couldn't think of a better example of our product's quality. But anyway, we're glad you're safe. I've seen a lot of comments that we should send you some Stanleys. Oh, we're going to send you some Stanleys. But there's one more thing. We've never done this before, and we'll probably never do it again, but we'd love to replace your vehicle. Yeah, all of us at Stanley, we'd really like to replace your vehicle. So check your DMs for details. Thanks, be safe, cheers.
So talk about customer service on social. That social team was clearly on point and listening for when the comments were talking about people were asking them to give product, engaging with their CEO. Again, that goes back to what we talked about, is making sure that your social team has an alignment or has a road and a path to be speaking to your executive team and to jump on these opportunities. This video, when I put the slide deck together, had 37.2 million views from a brand channel that only has, I think, 631,000 followers. So this opportunity probably gave them $1 billion worth of earned media impressions, and that positive brand awareness is priceless. And so really it is about, it again, comes down to that listening. So quite simply, your brand needs to get to the right people with the right message at the right time, because trust, which is critical to relationships, is earned in drops and lost in buckets. And satisfied detractors can become our most passionate supporters if they feel like they were listened to, if they feel like they got what they needed from you, from the brand on social, in your social customer care. And then you can turn that customer service piece that often is seen as a cost center into offense. Because 9 times more consumers trust recommendations from friends and family, other forms of advertising. And one of our other customer, just another example, Malia Hotels and Resorts, an international company, say that more than 10% of their revenue is driven through customer interaction on social. So we know that the relationships you are forging on social are driving revenue for your organization. So let's ask ourselves, is your company approaching social as a place to build valuable relationships? This is a bit of a checklist. It kind of goes over everything that we've talked about so far. I know I'm coming close to time and I want to make sure to leave some time for questions. But this just gives you an idea of what to be thinking about. Do you know who your audience is? Do you understand your customers' pain points? Do you have an advocate creation strategy? Things to think about as you go through these customer relationship journeys. If so, great. You're really setting your organization up to realize the business value of these relationships. But if not, I'm telling you, we are never, ever getting back. Great. So would love to move into Q&As if anyone has any questions.
Thank you so much, Melanie. That was amazing. And I know that Swifty is not everyone's cup of tea, but it's definitely mine. So I really appreciated that story. In terms of questions, there's definitely a few here that I can see in the Q&A. So let's go through them together. I've got one here that says, what trends do you foresee shaping the future of social relationships? What type of content should we create? And what social media platform should we be on, etc.?
Yeah, that's a big question. I mean, I think really the future of social relationships, why we presented it this way is really thinking about how you forge a relationship in person and with the people in your lives should be no different than how you're doing it on social. So one of the things we think about is if you walk into a room and you just only talk about yourself, how beneficial will that be to the relationships you're trying to forge in that room? So it's really thinking about it from that perspective. It's thinking about how do I provide value to this person in a personal situation, the same as online. So, an example of some of the things that we do is we know that our audience are social media managers. And so it's really thinking about, when we think about pain points, oftentimes social media managers feel underappreciated, undervalued. People don't understand what they do. So much of what we try to do from a content perspective is to validate that, to communicate that to our audience so that they have this affinity with us and we build that relationship and that degree of trust with them. I think it can happen on any social channel. At Hootsuite, we're doing it across all of the channels. It looks a little bit different depending. So it really comes down to who's your audience, where are they? If you don't have the same bandwidth of a social team, it's really prioritizing the channel where you know that audience is and really thinking about what would they appreciate coming from me that still aligns with your business objectives, but allows you to create this affinity with that audience so that when that 90-10 rule, you go back, they've already feel like this is a trusted relationship. And so that's kind of the high level answer I'd give to that big question.
Amazing. And I think, I love what you said about it comes down where your audience is, because there's no point of trying to do every single platform if your audience isn't on every single one of them. So I think you've hit the point on the head perfectly there. The next question I've got here is, how do you recommend brands balance authenticity with strategic planning to create a meaningful and effective social media presence?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately being authentic to your brand means different things for different brands. So it depends on, I think about it as it depends on what your corporate OKRs are, what your strategy is. For instance, another example is if you are wanting to say, we want to be known as the best employer in our space, that really then helps decide what your social strategy should look like. If that is one of your key objectives, knowing you'll have a few, so you align your strategy with those objectives. So if you know that, that really helps you determine who your audience is that you're trying to reach with that message. You're trying to reach new recruits. You're trying to reach new potential employees. So you attach that with that. So and then what you're producing to prove that proof point has to be authentic. You're talking about your benefits. You're talking about your people and how they are thriving within your organization. That's how you be authentic and also align with those corporate objectives.
Amazing. I love that. So I think we've got time for one more question. So I'm going to be quick with this one. What do you think are the most important qualities when hiring a social media content creator?
Oh yeah, great question. I think what I really value in our team is one is their ability to put themselves out there. It's tough. Like, don't get me wrong. It is tough. You have to be willing to try things. You have to be willing to fail and get back up and do it again. So I think there's a tenacity that I think is required in the role. I think creativity is absolutely critical. I think a strategic mind is very critical because it isn't just about creating content for content. It's creating content that aligns with your strategy and with your corporate strategy and being able to be tapped into that. And just somebody that loves what they do, because that comes through on your social channels. It is absolutely apparent when you have a social media manager that's loving what they're doing. And so I think that we've got a social media career report. Don't know if it's been put up in the chat, but where we really talked about social media managers, and they really need to be elevated in your organization. They're critical to your function.
Exactly, and I couldn't agree more. Well, thank you so much, Melanie, for joining us. This was a great session, and I've learned so much from you. So thank you for bringing your insights. If you want to stick around with us, we do have a workshop led by Tyler from PlayPlay, who will showcase how you can create a video with AI in 10 seconds or less. Next. If not, come back in the next 15 minutes for Andy's session on AI for content marketing. See you then.